It's Mo Egger. When football season overlaps with college basketball season, there's no better place to watch all the games than Long Neck Sports Grill. 3 locations in northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. Each one of them has 4K TVs all over the place. And, of course, the sound is always on for the big games. Plus, the menu at Long Neck's is awesome. You've got to try the wings. And, of course, no place has a better beer selection. There's a ton of games happening right now. Grab your buddies and get to Long Neck's. Stay late. Come often. All right, 4:33 on ESPN, 15:30 on Mo Egger. One thing we do every Wednesday is we talk injuries mostly throughout the NFL with one of the experts at OrthoCincy. Great thing about OrthoCincy is you never need an appointment. They've got locations with evening hours and Saturday hours. OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Joining us this week is Dr. John Fritch. Let's talk about Jamar Chase. All signs are pointing toward him playing on Sunday. I'm not sure that the labrum tear is healed. How much of his return is simply for him going to be on Sunday about pain management?
I think nearly 100% at this point. So I know different reports say he had a hip labral tear and a hairline fracture. Usually with the hairline fractures, I assume they mean a stress fracture. It's about just some time for the bones to heal, usually around 6 weeks. So this week would make it 6 weeks at that point. In terms of the labral tear, generally those don't heal on their own. If you're able to compensate for it and control the pain and get through the motions, then it's going to be 100% about pain control. So they're going to be giving him medications, potentially injections, and if he's able to go through the motions and do it safely, they'll probably let him play.
Is there something that's going to give us, if we're watching the game, is there something that's going to tell us whether or not he's handling the pain okay or that he's compromised?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, certainly while he's practicing with the team this week, I'm sure they're going to be running through drills, make sure he's able to run his routes. And if he's not able to keep up to speed or make his cuts, if it's obvious that he's going to fall or potentially compromise himself and get hit, then hopefully they would keep him out of the game. I think while we're watching him play, we just want to be sure that he's looking his normal self, able to run his passing routes, and if he is, then hopefully he'll be out there for a good part of the game.
How much risk is he dealing with here on Sunday?
A reasonable amount of risk. I don't know if they would put him out there necessarily if they were immediately concerned that he's going to re-injure himself. Of course, if he is not ready and not able to get up to speed, he's going to put himself at risk of getting hit harder than usual. And if he falls directly on that head, potentially starting back at square one. And so my hope would be that if he's not looking up to speed by the end of the week, that potentially, unfortunately, if he's not ready to go, then keeping him out.
Let's talk about the reigning NFL MVP. Aaron Rodgers is dealing with an injury to his ribs. I don't have the faintest clue as to how rib injuries get treated. Is there even a treatment, or is it simply a matter of rest and sit back and wait for the injury itself to heal on its own?
So you're right. Most of these injuries are about rest and letting the body heal them up. Nearly all rib injuries are treated conservatively, which means without surgery. Only in rare instances, if you have multiple rib fractures after a big car wreck or something and you're having difficulty breathing, then we may plate them. But most of these, it's about controlling the pain with medications, sometimes lidocaine patches. Sometimes people will get some nerve blocks, but you run the risk of complications. You think a Tyrod Taylor has collapsed lung.
Yeah. If he's dealing with something like an oblique injury, and look, I mean, I've seen baseball pitchers go through oblique injuries, and it screws up their entire season. But if it's something as, quote, simple as an oblique injury, what treatments might that entail?
Yeah, so oblique injuries are treated like most muscle strains: rest, ice, anti-inflammatories, sometimes these lidocaine patches. Usually they just require time to heal. Given the situation the Packers are in, I mean, they're going to be looking to play Rodgers as soon as he's feeling up to it. And it sounds, based on reports, that he's feeling up to it. Obviously, with these twisting motions, with passes he's making and running, it's going to strain this area and be painful. But, I mean, he's a seasoned vet. He's tough. I expect him to be out there on Sunday.
Dr. John Fritch is with us from OrthoCincy. One more player I want to talk about, and obviously somebody with an area connection in Ohio State's Justin Fields, obviously now with the Chicago Bears. He missed last week with a separated shoulder. It is his non-throwing shoulder. He still tried to give it a go during practice. Does the treatment for something like this at all differ if you're a quarterback and the injury is to your non-throwing shoulder?
Yeah, so these do differ. It's all about time in terms of this injury. Usually we treat it with a brief period of immobilization, anti-inflammatories, and shoulder rehab. But, I mean, it makes all the difference whether it's your throwing shoulder or not when you're a quarterback. Usually when it's your non-throwing shoulder, you can play while it's still painful and healing, as long as you're not taking hits all the time. And it is your throwing shoulder. That's a pretty violent motion to really wrench on the shoulder to toss a pass. And so it takes just a little while longer before you're able to do that.
He did try to practice last week. For somebody like me who sometimes has a hard time just getting out of bed, how could he go through a practice and how could he have possibly played with this injury?
Yeah. He's a tough guy. And because it's his non-throwing arm, he can likely deal with the pain. The real things that he's going to want to avoid are direct blows to the shoulder. So while he's practicing, I guarantee he's not getting hit at all, but he's warming up his throwing shoulder, make sure he can still complete passes and go through the motions. I think if they do end up playing him this week, they'd make sure he's got protection and avoid running him.
Dr. John Fritch, OrthoCincy.com. Check him out. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, there you have it, Dr. John Fritch, OrthoCincy.com. By the way, and I say this all the time, the great thing about the folks at OrthoCincy, you do not need an appointment, and it's easier, more effective, and certainly cheaper than going to an ER when you have some sort of injury issue. Locations in Edgewood and Eastgate with extended evening and Saturday hours. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. All right. Hey, if you're a college basketball fan in Northern Kentucky, the best place to watch all the games is the best place to watch football, too. Long Neck Sports Grill. 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Ridgewood. 4K TVs all over the place. And, of course, the sound's on for all the big games. And don't forget, the menu at Long Necks is extensive. I love the wings, and no place has a better beer selection. Grab your buddies, watch college hoops, watch football, have a blast. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often.